The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. Black Friday Game Day on Prime is an epic day of live sports. It all starts at 9 a.m. Eastern with the Capital One Skins game. Then, Black Friday football returns when the Bears take on the Eagles at 3 p.m. And it culminates with the final night of Emirates NBA Cup group play with Bucks Knicks at 7 p.m. and Mavs Lakers at 10 p.m. Black Friday Game Day, only on Prime.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast. And you join us on Match Day once again after we've enjoyed a fortnight of seeing the lads sitting fourth in the Premier League table. But that is the last break from the international footy until March. And as Register Bris said in his press conference this week, we'll be getting into that in more detail. He described this section of the season that we're coming into as the main course. Which means, of course, we had a cracking starter in this fancy meal analogy that our manager was coming up with. So the main course begins today with a trip to the Big Smoke as we take on Fulham at Craven Cottage. And first up is someone I know for a fact loves his scran. So he'll be getting into the main course starter analogy because I'm very pleased to say we have Gavin Henderson with us. Hello, Gav.
Yes, I am not offended by that, as it is true. Do enjoy me scran, Chris, and enjoy talking about Sunderland. So, you know, I haven't got an analogy retort ready, if I'm honest. Tort's food, isn't it?
Very good.
Yeah, very good. Yes. Looking forward to this one and looking forward to the game. I've missed it. I've got to be honest. I've really missed proper football. As you know, you're like me. We aren't fans of the international break. I hate them. I hate them even more when Sunderland are good because it's just denying us of the opportunity to watch my favourite team play. Yeah. And I'm not into cricket, so I don't care about that. I don't care about watching England play unless it's a big tournament. I was more bothered about Scotland than bloody England this international break. That was a bit of fun. But yes, looking forward to the proper footy. It's back.
Don't say that around Calvin. But very quickly, Gav, in this meal analogy that Register Bris said, if you had to describe Sunderland's start to the season as a starter, what would it be? What would be your favourite starter?
Oh,
how big was it? How good was this starter? And what would it be on the menu?
Now, them sharing platters where you get a bit of everything from the Indians. There's like an onion bhaji and a chicken tikka and a sikh kebab and poppadoms with dips. I think it's probably a bit of that, and it's spicy but nice.
Gav, keep talking dirty to us, honestly. love that.
Yogurt sauce all over it.
Oh, Gav, man, beer. Well, let's move on very quickly because also joining us, and you've already heard his voice, we have the smooth tones of someone who couldn't stop mentioning meringue and pink custard on the Room 101 pod. So we'll have to see if he's allowed to mention food on this pod because we have Andrew Smithson with us. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. Yes, I committed the cardinal sin and I started speaking before I'd been introduced there, lads. So sorry for that. I have a shocking sweet tooth, so I'm already looking forward to the dessert part of the season. And yeah, I think that must have clearly been why I was talking about meringues and pink custard and God knows what else. Definitely puddings is a way forward for me. Like
I've got to say, when I was listening to that, it was just evoking memories, like semolina and stuff I wouldn't even eat now, but I used to love when I was at school. Like pink custard just brings back those memories, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
We'll have to do Food 101 just for a laugh in the summer or something like that when there's no funny. Especially if we don't have a summer like we've just had and nothing actually happens. But last summer wouldn't have been able to squeeze one in, but definitely do a Food 101. But I was going to say, Andrew, I listened to you, Martin, and Ant go through some of the past kind of visits we've had to Craven Cottage, but just generally, just a lovely place to go to, isn't it? Just a nice little ground. Nice pubs around and just a nice place, isn't it? I mean, expensive, but a nice place.
It is, yeah. And we could do a restaurant review to go along with the food analogies. Loads of nice pubs and gastro pubs and restaurants down there. It's a nice part of the world. But as I think I said on the pod, all of that goes out the window and it's purely results based. If Sunderland win, I couldn't care if we were playing in the middle of nowhere.
Well, that goes without saying, to be honest. But Gav, I mean, you weren't on that pod, and like we've played one league game at Craven Cottage in the last 10 years, so we haven't had that many visits. But you got memories of going to Craven Cottage?
Yeah, it was the last time I was there, we drew 0-0. It was the week before we beat Newcastle 2-1 when Richardson scored, and I believe he scored a free kick which got disallowed because Chimbonda grabbed, I think, Jimmy Bullard's knob in the wall. I might be wrong in that. I think it was Bullard. And he also hit the post 3 times with one free kick. Hit the post, hit the other post, hit Mark Schwarzer on the back, hit the post again, and then he gathered it. And I think they announced Johnny Haynes' statue at that game. So they had all these club legends on the pitch at half time, one of which was Jimmy Hill. And that was when he was playing up to the crowd a bit, and the bloke in front of me was going to run on the pitch and kill him. It was pretty bad. I'm pretty sure that video is on YouTube. It's a bit grainy, but I'm pretty sure it's out there still. So that's my one abiding memory of Fulham. It was a long time ago. But you're right, we haven't played them much at all. And I listened to you talk on the opposition preview pod with the young lady from Fulhamish, and you were talking about how there is a bit of magic still there with Craven Cottage because it is one of the original old grounds. It's still knocking about. I think last time I was there, they still had wooden seats. So, I remember, and actually there's another memory just popped back into my head. I can't remember when it was or what the result was, but I remember being there with my dad and Lee Clark. I think Lee Clark was playing for Fulham and he got booed to hell. And I remember being in a wooden seat. And I think we were on the halfway line because I'm pretty sure there was something going on, but the wooden seats were kind of on the I might be wrong. I might just be completely making that up. But I've got a vague memory of Lee Clark playing for Fulham. I'll have to look that one up. But not somewhere, when you look down the years, not somewhere we've traditionally struggled. I think we tend to do all right at Craven Cottage. It's somewhere when I think about Fulham, I just think about us winning there, to be honest, or picking up points there.
Yeah, well, I'll come up with some stats further down the line, maybe just to back that up, Gav. But look, I want to get into a few things because obviously we want to get into the match, but I want to get into what came out of the press conference on Thursday this week to start off with, and then we'll work our way to the game. And the first one I wanted to talk about was from the transfer rumour mill. And it was Keith Downing who brought up at the press conference, and it was the link. And I think, Gav, you talked about it briefly on the news roundup, but I'll be interested to hear what you say about Register Brits' reaction, because Keith Downing asked them about former Arsenal midfielder Matteo Guendouzi, who is now at Lazio. And it was a chance for Register Brits to bat it away and deny everything and say, nope, there's no links. But his response seemed to say a lot as far as I was concerned, because he said, that it's too soon to talk about it, that they're still well connected because his time at Lorient and that he managed them. He loves saying that the squad and he loves these connections. But yeah, he didn't bat it away, Gav, and it just felt like there's something in it.
Yeah, normally the reply is, we don't like to talk about other teams as players. It's not fair. When a manager says that normally says more, doesn't it? Like if a manager turns around and goes, we don't like to talk about other teams as players, what he's basically saying is, we do want them, But Regis Labris in particular, he holds his cards close to his chest at every opportunity. Every one of these press conferences is quite interesting to watch because he doesn't give anything away, but he manages to. He's quite like a politician, really, in many respects, the way he answers things. I was really shocked with the way he answered this question. I don't think when you read the quotes written down, it does it justice. You have to watch the interview, look at his facial expressions and the way he talks. I genuinely think there's something in this. I wouldn't. We were speculating, me and Johnny, on the deep dive which we did on the African Cup of Nations about the possibility of the club doing business very early in January to deal with the impact of losing players. And if we do that, there would have to be players who were, one, ready to play games, and two, who had Premier League experience, and we knew where to fit in. Guendouzi fits the bill across the board. I think he's 26 year old, but he's played over 100 games in the Premier League for Arsenal, for a big club. Played with Granit Xhaka before. His youth coach at Lorient was Regis Bris. His current club, Lazio, he's a little bit out of favour and they're skint, so they'll be keen to get rid of him quickly to recruit players themselves in January. And it just makes so much sense. I mean, he's perfect for what we need. We do need another Premier League experienced midfielder. I know we've got Diarra coming back, but he's had a big injury and he's going to take a while to get back up to speed. We can't ask too much of Siddiqui and Xhaka because they'll end up breaking down. They're already on the cusp of a suspension, which has raised the issue about what do we do if they're missing, because we were already missing Diarra. If we lost Siddiqui and Xhaka on Saturday, both to a yellow card, it means that we're going to have an entirely new midfield for the next game. All these things are being talked about because we aren't adequately covered in that position. So Guendouzi just makes so much sense, and the reaction from Bris said everything. I would, if there was a way to put money on this, I would put money on him signing for us in January. I was already looking at when me and Johnny done it on the news roundup and we were chatting about it. We were talking about how this just makes so much sense and all the other things. But then to hear him talk the way he did in that press conference, and by the way, for Keith to even give that story credence says a lot, because Keith only comments on things which have got something in them. And I just think if you could put money on Guendouzi signing for Sunderland, I would do it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one to watch. And by the way, if anybody didn't listen to Gav and Johnny doing a deep dive on the African Cup of Nations, it was absolutely brilliant, because I realised how kind of ignorant I am about it and how little I know about the whole competition. I know absolutely nothing. So it kind of taught me a lot about the competition. So go back and listen to that if you haven't already. Another interesting one that came out of it, Andrew, was one raised by Andy Sixsmith, because he mentioned a French media documentary on Regis Bris and Sunderland, and he mentioned Xhaka in there, compared our manager to Arsene Wenger. And again, Regis Bris, he had a smile on his face, but I think it was kind of an ironic one, really. He's not too fussed about this, but he said, it's all positive, that this was happening, but he wanted to be his own man, which he's kind of like that. But generally, all this exposure is just great for the club, isn't it?
There's loads of positivity around the club, and yeah, that's a good thing. Everybody that is speaking about Sunderland is saying good things. I mean, that's quite a claim to make about Bris. Obviously, he's a humble fella. He's not going to go, aye, he's right. But it's just another nice thing being said. The whole press conference was interesting to me, because Bris does always play things with a straight bat still. And he's never going to try and pull the wool over anybody's eyes. But there was just like a bit of cheekiness around him. He's made that reference to the main course, and his comments about Guendouzi are interesting. So he seemed quite chipper. It seems as if all's good at the club at the moment.
Yeah. We'll get into the break, because he said he was clearly working hard. But actually, one thing that happened over the break, Gav, that was raised at the press conference, was the Sunderland Association Football Club lettering on top of the stand at the Stadium of Light. And the manager was asked about it. And it was one of these where I expected, it was one of those throwaway questions that actually you might just go, yeah, it's good. give a very quick answer. But he got right into this one where he said, he talked about it being about the identity of the club. And even though it's such a small things, that these things do make a difference and kind of go into the pot in terms of driving this team on. But it's amazing how much those things do make a difference, Gav.
Well, after seeing the stadium just drop to bits in front of our eyes for 20 years, it does make a big difference. It makes a massive difference because we love the Stadium of Light. It's our home. So when we turn up on a Saturday to watch the lads play, we feel pride in it, and it's like your own house. You get a new shed, or you give the fence a lick of paint or whatever. You're proud of it. You do your flower beds in the spring. And you step back and you look at it and you go, "Oh, that looks good." That, you know what I mean? When you love something genuinely, you take pride in it, and it could be something as daft as lettering up on a stand, but it all of a sudden the East Stand isn't just the East Stand. It's now got lettering on it, and you walk into the ground, you're going to look at it and say, "Oh, a bit like the Jimmy Montgomery stand on the other side." These things are really important when we're trying to showcase who we are and our identity. And it might just seem like a small thing, but it isn't a small thing, because it's a sign to us as fans from the football club that they care, they're putting money into these things, that they're listening. It won't be the last of it. I know that one of the scoreboards is down at the minute because they are getting replaced, and they're going to be replaced with the scoreboards you see in stadiums like Wembley and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, state of the art, ultra high definition. I think from what David Bruce said in the meeting I was in with him, that they're going to be facing the crowd as well. So, if you're under the stand, you're going to be able to see what's on the screen. That'll help with things like VAR checks. The club can do so much more with these new screens and things like that. They're all little things. Like when we come back in after the summer and we've seen the concourse improvements, and it's ongoing at the minute, but the cleaning up of the white paint on the outside of the stadium, the new bridge opening, the walkway up to the stadium where they've got photos of the area and the city and things like that. Hey, people love it, and I love it. And we did talk about this actually when I think it was around the Wolves game, about the new bridge opening and how every game there's just been something. When you turn up, there's something else. There's so next time we walk into the ground, there's going to be new screens and there's going to be lettering up on the East Stand. It might, you know what I mean? Before that, it was the bridge opening, and we had the remembrance display for the last home game, and every game there's just been something when you turn up that makes it feel a little bit different this time, and it all adds to the sense of occasion. And we got to be proud of that, man, because it's not going to go on forever, is it? We can't just keep making massive improvements to the ground. Eventually there's going to come a point where we just turn up to the stadium and it's like, oh, they haven't changed anything today. So just embrace it. I love it. I know I'm speaking to two people who are just like me on this, but it is nice to see, isn't it? After just seeing the club not really, it's been a bit unloved for a long time, and now we've got the money to do things. It's great to see it happening.
It was a couple of nights ago. I can't remember if it was Wednesday night or Thursday night how, but I was at the under-21s at the stadium, so I saw the lettering in person. That lettering didn't need to be done, but yeah, it looked the part, and you can see the work on the scoreboard started. That's going to be massive, that. The size of it, the scale of it, completely dwarfs what was there before. And like Gav said, it previously used to feel unloved, but when I was in there for the under-21s game and there's fewer people around, you really do get to notice some of those changes a lot more, just those little bits of TLC and care and attention being paid to it. And the Sunderland Association Football Club along the top, I think that's quite a smart move, because that's the side of the ground where the cameras face. There'll always be now, if there's any footage or a photograph and everybody's in the stands, if you can't quite tell whose ground that is, well, it's there. And it's going to be on infographics, on Sky, on all these foreign broadcasters. Just that little thing, this is our ground, this is who we are. It just all adds to this feeling. And somebody's now, the other side of the world, is going to see a game at the Stadium of Light and be under no misconceptions about who we are.
Yeah.
Little thing, but it it could count. Didn't Bris have a little joke about it as well and say something like, it will have a benefit? I don't know when, but it will. It was something like that. It was a nice line.
Well, that's it. It all kind of goes into the mix, doesn't it? Just like we're talking about the feel-good factor. But Andrew, I mean, the topic of the international break was brought up a few times, and there was a couple of interesting aspects to it. The first one was when he said that basically it gave him a chance to do some real kind of deep analysis on the last few games. And he talked to the press about reaching our limits, or Arsenal taking us to our limits in that game. And it sounds like they've done a lot of analysis on how Arsenal did that and where our weaknesses are, and that they've really spent the time. So, but it's one of these things that it's really interesting that when they've got 2 weeks, he doesn't say, oh, well, let's have a break for 5-6 days or whatever and come back on the following Tuesday or whatever and have a few days training. They've basically sat down and they've pulled the game to bits and said, well, look, Arsenal are the best side in Europe. They put us under pressure. They stretched us to our limits. What can we do to actually make ourselves better, even though we've just drawn against one of probably the best side in Europe?
It's really encouraging, isn't it? I mean, he doesn't do things by halves anyway. Even in the Championship, when there was a game every few days, he was getting as much preparation in as possible. So yeah, the fact that he's already at a high level and is then, like you say, using that additional time to go even deeper, that is brilliant. Because for me, if I was a manager, I would just go, right, lads, we've cracked it. We've got a point against Arsenal, more of the same. And I would just walk out the changing room whistling, thinking, that's it, job done. But he is not leaving any stone unturned. He is doing everything properly. And why not? If the information's available, the data, the footage, put it to your advantage. All those little tiny margins could just be the difference between us doing something and not doing something. As we come onto it, Fulham are not in a good place as a club at the moment, but Sunderland are. Everybody's buzzing, everybody's wanting to work hard and put that graft in. So let's maximise it and get the most out of it.
Yeah, we'll definitely come on to Fulham because that's an interesting one. But another interesting side of the international break, Gav, again, something you talked about, he said it was good for the players to refresh their energy levels. But he also said, and I think this is an interesting one, where players go away into a different atmosphere and have to come back. Because I think they've done really well in putting the players into a mindset where, and, Xhaka said, we want to kind of die for the result and put our bodies on the line and all this sort of stuff. And he said that it might be tough to get that connection we had before the break because of how we play, because of the fact that we go out with this determination and we want to be in the opposition's faces and we want to defend well and put our bodies on the line. And he said that they need to get that atmosphere back when players return because, the place is probably empty for a week or so, then everybody comes back. But it is interesting how he says he has to get everyone back into that way of thinking, isn't it, when they go away into a different atmosphere and then come back to it?
I mean, it makes perfect sense, though, when you think, you go away probably playing with a lower standard of players for most of them. With a lower quality of coaching, lower quality training pitches, you've got travel involved, different priorities, for a lot of the players going away that were trying to qualify for the World Cup. So there's an immediate mindset shift. Now get me words out, put my teeth in. For people going abroad. So all of a sudden you have to refocus. But I think one of the positive things about when you're doing well is when the lads are going away to play for their countries and maybe having a good time away with their countries. I'm sure they'll love it. They're looking forward to returning. It's not a case of they're going away and they're like, oh, I wish I could stop here for a bit. They can't wait to get back and play for Sunderland. And it must mean it's a lot easier just to readjust. You come back and it's like everyone, you see it on the videos, everyone slapping hands and all that. They love all that, our players, don't they? But there's a real camaraderie there and they just pick up where they left off from. There was times in the past, even last season, where I can remember coming up with national breaks and thinking, actually, I think the lads could do with this. I think they could do with a little bit of a break away from each other. But with the current crop, I think they just love it, don't they? And conversely, by the way, when I was listening to the pod you did with Fulhamish. It was interesting to hear that after international breaks, Fulham have struggled. So I'm just looking now. They got beat off Leeds. Sorry, no, they didn't get beat off Leeds. They beat Leeds after the August break. So, but they came back and they got beat off Arsenal the last time around. They're on a bit of a bad run, aren't they? So maybe for them it's a little bit different with their players going off all over the place. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, for us, anyways, we absolutely seem to love it. And I'm hoping that despite the schedules for some of the players, they've had a long way to go. Particularly some of the African players, they've been away all over the place, and some of them games have been brutal as well. I mean, Siddiqui and Masuaku, they played 120 minutes for DR Congo, and then it went to penalties against Nigeria. So they've had a proper grueler, a long way to travel as well. You've just got to hope that, Noah Siddiqui's energy levels are still high, but he's a young man. I'm sure he can cope with it. But yeah, I made this point as well, the other day. We're not going a long way. Kind of London's easy to get into, so for the travelling stuff, it's not so bad. Maybe we've had quite a relaxed schedule, return back to work type thing with the players, coming back in sort of Thursday, Friday. I think you've got to look at our response after the last couple of international breaks. We've been okay, haven't we?
Yeah. And I think Elizabeth discounted the Leeds game because Leeds United was so bad in that game that I don't think she thought it counted. But just the last one before we get properly into the game, Andrew, because and on the theme of what Gav was talking about there, where players just are loving it at Sunderland and don't want to leave, because he talked about Dennis Serkin, Romain Mundle and Leo Hjelde getting minutes against Sporting Lisbon during the week and coming back. And we all love to hear positive news like that because we want some strength and depth, which is always good, because the conversation turned AFCON a little bit, and obviously building on the deep dive that Johnny and Gav did. But I thought, Andrew, it was quite interesting that I didn't know this, but he was pushed on official rules on when players have to leave, and he said there was none, which I thought was quite a positive thing, because as Gav said, you would think that most of them would want to stay as long as possible.
You have to hope so, yes. And again, what he said was encouraging, because he said, we haven't made any final decisions. We're not bound by hard and fast rules. But there has been a couple of informal conversations just to understand where the players' minds are at. He quite rightly recognised that being called up for your national team is an honour, and the players want to do that. He's not being awkward with them. But at the end of the day, Bris and the club do need to put Sunderland first. And again, they're just across everything. So Bris knows for a flying fact what will and won't be allowed. There's going to be no last minute decisions and, oh, hang on, so-and-so has to be allowed to leave by tomorrow or we're going to be in bother. But yeah, they're dealing with this situation well. And again, it's much easier to have these conversations and everybody getting on and being honest with each other when things are going well. I've never been overly concerned by the AFCON. I've always taken the view of, well, if players need to be away for a few weeks, somebody else is just going to have to take the opportunity. And it seems so far that everybody's all on the same page, everybody's open and honest. We'll do right by the players and the countries and give them time to go and prepare. But in the meantime, while they're on Weir side, they'll be getting stuck in, wearing red and white and giving it as good a go as they can.
Yep. And I always love a flying fact, Andrew. So that was fantastic.
Did I give it a flying Did I give that one the flying fact treatment?
Yeah, there was a flying fact. Can't even say it now. There was one of them in it. Anyway, that's a really good place for us to take a quick break before we get properly into the game. So we'll be back after these few ads.
No one should have to choose between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina is helping to create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters through the Purple Leash Project, so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
With new, gentler scented Clorox disinfecting wipes, clean finally smells as good as it feels. On everything from lamps, to ceiling fans, even on your kid's toy shark. Oh, ouch. Clorox Disinfecting Wipes, now available in crisp lemon. Find it on Amazon. Clorox, clean feels good.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And we are going to get into the game today because very quickly and I think I've touched on this, we've only had 1 league game at Craven Cottage in the last 10 years. And 4 of the last 6 meetings between the two sides have come in the FA Cup. And incidentally, all in the 4th round, funnily enough. But we have also won, as Gav touched on, 3 of the last 5 visits to Fulham, which could potentially boost our confidence a little. But Gav Register Bris was asked about confidence around Sunderland at the moment, and he did touch on it, saying, it's fragile because at some point we will lose games. But he said it's also important to keep the type of mindset consistently that we had against West Ham, where we almost shouldn't get comfortable and be right on top of our game and right in the opposition's faces. Do you think at the moment with those sort of comments, there's an element of keeping the players' feet on the ground at the moment?
Possibly. I think our feet have been on the ground virtually every game this season. I don't think we ever go somewhere with arrogance. To be honest, the style of football we play kind of lends to that. We are safety first, at least for the first 45, 50 minutes. We try to be. Away from home, the strategy is a little bit different to home, of course. And we won't be going to Fulham and thinking we can just walk all over them. We've never done that. It's just not in his makeup. And to be honest, strategically, it makes 0 sense to do that because Fulham, despite having a difficult season so far, they've got good players and they can beat pretty much anybody on the day. We're probably looking at some of their recent performances and stuff. You're going to take confidence from it because they've struggled. They haven't really recruited very well over the summer. I think they've got quite a lot of players missing as well. I think Raul Jimenez has only just came back from an injury and isn't particularly fit, but is their only striker. So you can kind of work out what the team's going to be. But on written down, it's not a bad side. So we're not going to go there with arrogance. We'll probably go there. Fulham are the home team. They're probably going to come flying out the blocks for the first 5-10 minutes to try and get the crowd on side and try and put us on the back foot a little bit. And we've got to be ready for that. Register Bris very, very clever in how he does things. He'll set the team up to first and foremost go out there and try and work Fulham out a little bit before we try and impact on the game. It makes perfect sense what he's saying. You can't take them lightly. They're a struggling team, but they're still decent. I always say this, Chris, there's nobody in the Premier League who's a poor team, really. They've all got good players. And even on the worst days, things click. I remember going back last time we were in the Premier League, going to Crystal Palace and scoring 4 in the first half away from home. And we were useless that year. Do you know what I mean? Like even crap teams click. So the mantra's got to be to go there, don't take them lightly. Their last home game, they won 3-0, didn't they? So that they're not utterly hopeless. We can't go there just because they've had a bad run. Can't go there arrogant. And Le Bris is obviously going to be focusing first and foremost on not conceding goals for that first portion of the game, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Well, Andrew, the conversation turned to our away form and how we set up away. And I said after the Arsenal game, actually, that I think Register Bris looked at that as almost as an away game with the way we set up. But he did mention in the press conference specifically that they'd looked at goals that we conceded against Everton and Arsenal, where we essentially handed them possession in our half through cheap turnovers, as he described them. But it seems to have been something that has crept into our game. Do you think at times we've potentially been a bit too laid back in possession in our own half at times recently?
I don't know. I think you perhaps have to give credit to the opposition teams. Certainly, in fact, the Everton one as well. They were all still quality goals from the point that they won the ball back from us. What an amazing position to be in, where we are getting points off Arsenal. We're up at the top of the table, and there's still areas that we can tighten up on. So there's room there for more improvement. I'm not too concerned, because I think just the nature of the game and the nature of how we try to play, there will be the odd occasion when we lose the ball. We all love Enzo Lefebvre. We all love the fact that he can do things in possession and maybe take a couple of risks. If every now and again he gets caught out and loses possession, can you maybe afford that on the assumption that the other times when he takes that gamble, it actually pays off and we put the other team into danger? I think we've got enough skill and we should be able to trust in our players that over the course of the season, the way we're trying to do things will pay off. But hey, listen, no problem whatsoever if Bris has identified that and does want to work on it.
Yeah, it is interesting how he seems to talk about our weaknesses more than our strengths during press conferences. But let's move on to Fulham, Gav, because you've touched on them already. Because I think it's a really interesting one. Maybe when you look at the next few years for us, maybe let's hope we kind of skip this stage. But if you looked at Fulham, they've had 3 great years, finishing between 10th and 13th in the Premier League after yo-yoing between the two top divisions for a while. They've had 2 quarter-final appearances in the FA Cup over the last 3 years. They've been in the League Cup semi-final once in that time as well. But they've hit a point that so many other clubs reach where people start asking, right, well, we've had those 3 years. What's next? And it seems to screw clubs up a bit when they hit this point. You can look back at loads of Charlton and Stoke, and there's loads of clubs that come into this bracket. And it's funny when clubs hit this point, Gav, when they don't know whether to stick or twist.
Well, that's it. And I think what was pretty clear from listening to your chat with a Fulham fan was the manager's really wrung this squad dry, because he hasn't had much to work with in comparison to other clubs. When you look at the overall spend and the strategy from the top, I think the Fulham owners have probably got their eyes on too many things in terms of their portfolio as a franchise. They own an NFL team, which is terrible. They own a wrestling company, I think, which apparently the director of football is more bothered about that than he is the football team. Can you imagine if Sunderland had an owner who all he did was tweet about wrestling? He's lucky like they're not more angry, because our fans wouldn't have that. I think they've picked the right club to get on with there, like, because Fulham fans aren't known for being particularly outspoken, are they? But just imagine that if Kirill Louis-Dreyfus was on Twitter every day tweeting about wrestling, and we're like, Kirill, where the fuck's the players? Like, we haven't signed anybody all summer, and you're tweeting about fucking wrestling, like, you know what I mean? But it's you can understand and sympathise with Marco Silva, because he's obviously trying to do a good job there, has done a very good job. And then you look at the squad and it's aging. It's aging badly as well. Jimenez has probably had his day. Iwobi's getting into that age bracket now where he's considered an older player. And to be honest, Iwobi's done really well under Silva, because when he went to Everton, he went there for big money and didn't do well at all at Everton. And I remember that signing happening, back him going across to Fulham and thinking, oh, really? But they've got quite a lot out of him. Harry Wilson nearly went to Leeds in August, yet he's playing every week now. Sander Berg has been relegated twice from the Premier League with other clubs, has done well since he went to Fulham. I think Ryan Sessegnon was out of favour and he's only in the team through injury, but he's been their best player apparently. Calvin Bassey was at Rangers. Kenny Tetty's been there a long, long time. You can go right through the squad. It's not a great squad. I know they've got good players. I've said that before, but you're looking at it and you're thinking, like, without serious investment, they could be in trouble. And if Marco Silva goes, which is still a possibility at this stage, then they could be really in the shit. Really in the shit. I'm looking even at, amongst the substitutes, they spent a fortune on Emile Smith-Rowe, who has flattered to deceive. At one point was, playing every week for Arsenal, was getting England squads. he's now making their bench. Tom Kearney's been there a long, long time and still a good player, but you know what I mean? The collective age of the group, the squad is aging, and they're not turning over players at the rate they probably should be. If it's probably to our benefit that the manager doesn't know where his future lies going into this game, because that uncertainty can only really help us, I think. I sympathise with Fulham fans, but I just think sometimes you're playing teams at the right time. It kind of feels that way with this one, although they did win 3-0 in the last home game. You look at the wider scope of things, they're in a poor run. The manager doesn't know what's going on. They're suffering a bit with injuries. I'm hoping this is a really good time to play them.
Yeah. Well, just building off what Gav was saying there, Andrew, because even though they put all their eggs in one basket, signing Kevin for 35 million nearly, I think.
Can't get over that name, by the way, Kevin.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, reminds me of Home Alone. But
yeah.
But the season did start well for Fulham, Andrew. They 1-2 and drew 2 of the first 5 games. Only lost against Chelsea, which probably, of course, hurt with that rivalry. But they've lost 5 in the last 6. But there's been some tough fixtures in there, and they've still only lost 1 at home. But as Gav touched on, their 3 wins have come against Leeds, Brentford, and Wolves. So it's all a bit confusing. But would we potentially be making the same mistake as people made with us if we underestimated them based on just who they've beaten in those 3 games?
You have to be careful not to underestimate a team, and as Gab mentioned earlier, any side in the Premier League has the individual quality to make something happen and catch you out. It does, I don't know if please me is the correct term, but yeah, they would be a lot lower down the division if they hadn't started as well as they did. Their more recent form has been poor. And I know they beat Wolves last time out at home, but from my memory, Wolves gave them a couple of helping hands. I think there was a sending off and some very shoddy defending. So even in the most recent game that they have won, they haven't been at their best. But Sunderland being Sunderland, you'd be ridiculously short-sighted to start taking things for granted and not preparing properly for Fulham. Just as Gav was speaking there, talking about the owner and having involvement in wrestling, I don't like wrestling, but that did ring a bell, and that's not a wrestling pun. Apparently, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. Apparently, one of the main wrestlers on their under contract. There's rumours floating around. I can't quite determine it here on Google, but apparently one of them is a big Sunderland fan. One of these big wrestlers, a lad called Kyle O'Reilly. So he might be asking his boss if he can get a ticket for the game this afternoon and cheer on the lads.
Right. Well, I thought you were going down the route of saying he maybe linked with the Fulham job, or a wrestler linked with a Fulham job or something like that. Because actually, I talked with Elizabeth Barnard, as Gav said, from Fulhamish during the week. And Gav, they recorded an emergency pod during the international window because the rumours were flying around that Marco Silva was about to be sacked. But you'd think, looking at what he's done there last few years, it would be a massive mistake if they did that.
Well, that's it, yeah. But you don't hear the full story necessarily, and as much as Marco Silva's done a great job there, is this not a good time for him to leave Fulham? Kind of while his stock's very high, because he's had a few jobs in England where it hasn't gone well, and I just think if Marco Silva left Fulham, he would walk into a better job eventually. So it wouldn't be the end of the world for him, would it? I kind of, but from Fulham's perspective, of course, it would be a disaster because he's held that club together for a good 4 years now, hasn't he? Really, and done a fair play to him. He's done a good job because, like I say, you look at some of the things that have gone on around him with this playing squad and stuff, and the fact that, prior to taking the Fulham job, he didn't have a good time at Everton. You know what I mean? So he'd had, really, it was a last chance saloon for him. He'd been out of the game a little bit before he got that Fulham job, and if it had gone wrong at Fulham, he wouldn't even be in the consideration for other jobs in England. But like I say, I don't think it would be the end of the world for him if he left. But it certainly would be difficult for Fulham, particularly when you see the names being linked as a replacement. Like, I know Brendan Rodgers has had a decent career as a manager, but I would be deflated if that was us again. You know, if Sunderland had got rid of a popular manager and replaced him with Brendan Rodgers, I think I'd be a little bit gutted. Kind of reminds us of us, actually. When you talk about how they've had a couple of years where it went particularly well, then they stagnated a little bit. Kind of, we went through this process last time we were in the Prem, and you've got to be careful because before you know it, you'll end up in a relegation battle and you're out of the picture, and then it becomes very difficult, particularly for a team in London who have probably got a high wage bill. You know, you don't want to be getting relegated at this stage, and they've really got to sort their shit out. We're round the corner from January, so I suspect I've got half of it. A little bit of us thinking that if we beat Fulham and we beat them pretty well, that could be curtains for him, Yeah, and that would be interesting.
Yeah, well, I kind of half mentioned that on the pod, Andrew, actually, because Elizabeth on the opposition preview mentioned the pressure on them to win the game. I mean, we're building up the whole picture around Fulham, which sounds pretty negative. But if you look at their current league position, the fact they're a point above the relegation places, and after us, they've got Spurs away, then Man City at home in the 2 games to follow after that. But they're under huge pressure to beat Sunderland at home, and it's maybe something we can play into.
Exactly. That's 100% what I want us to do, Chris. Chalk and cheese, how the two clubs are going into this game. We've discussed there about the possibility of Guendouzi coming to Sunderland, and we're all nodding our heads and thinking, yeah, that'd be a good move, and you could see what job he would do in the squad, and if he comes in, it's to bolster an area where we're low on numbers but high on quality. It's not like we're playing anybody out of position at the moment and we're desperate to get a natural midfielder in. Fulham, though, their transfer policy came under some real serious question marks over the summer. Your interview with Fulhamish was quite telling about the general mood around the club, the unhappiness about ticket pricing. I've heard somebody on the Guardian podcast talk about that a lot recently as well. It is a big issue. Everybody at Sunderland in the away section and on the bench are all fully behind the team and everything's going well. A phrase your guest used was that Fulham are very good at losing their heads. Well, Sunderland are the exact opposite of that. We've been in positions when we're a goal down. We've been in positions where we're a man down. And we've come back to win something. We're the exact opposite of what Fulham are at, where Fulham are at the moment, and we have to use that. Thanks, by the way, for that interview with Fulhamish, because it gave me most of my knowledge on Fulham. I don't know a lot about them. And while we're at it, thanks, Gav, because Chris recommended your AFCON pod. Ever since hearing that, all I've done is just rip off your opinions and pass them off as my own when anybody's asked. So yeah, all my Fulham
poisoned
knowledge.
the well, have I?
Yeah, all of my knowledge about AFCON and about this afternoon's game is courtesy of you. But we can look at where Sunderland are and just take a moment and think, isn't it nice that we're the ones where our house is in order? And for once, it's the opposition who have got all this sort of stuff happening in the background, and it will be playing on the players' minds.
Yep. And right, we're going to get into what we think the team lineup will be, but before that, we're going to take a quick break. So we'll be back after these 2 ads.
The Who's Down in Who Newville were making their list, but some didn't know Walmart has the best brands for their gifts.
What about toys? Do they have brands kids have been wanting all year?
Yep, Barbie, Tony's, and Lego. Gifts that will make them all cheer.
Do you mean they have all the brands I adore?
They have Nintendo, Nespresso, Apple, and more.
What about...
So the Who answered questions from friends till they were blue. Each one listened and shouted, from Walmart? Who knew? Shop gifts from top brands for everyone on your list in the Walmart app.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, But you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
And welcome back to How We're the podcast. And we're just about to get into what we think Sunderland are going to line up as this afternoon. But just very quickly, Gav, a quick question before we get into the lineup. If you look at the Chelsea game, our last away game, and that we kind of dug into we dug in and we kind of dug our trenches a little bit and caught them on the break. And to a certain extent, the game against Arsenal, you can maybe argue we had that sort of game plan. Being Fulham and the situation they're in, can you see us maybe being a little bit more on the front foot and a bit more positive in how we approach the game with Fulham?
Yeah, it's like I said before, I think initially we'll be pretty conservative, but I look at it and I think we've got an opportunity to win the game here, right? But we know how good we are later in games. So I think it's really difficult, this, actually, because I don't know how Fulham will approach it. I think we suspect Fulham will probably come out pretty quick, and that'll lend to how we play. We'll just, we'll contain them a little bit. We'll try and control the ball through the middle, get it out of the flanks, back inside like we do. We're really good at that, particularly with Xhaka dictating the play. But I think at the back end of the first half and the back end of the second half is when we come to life. So it's you kind of have to split Sunderland up, or certainly our games up, into sections. We have quite a predictable route which we take. We start, more often than not, we start relatively slowly, but we don't leave too many gaps. The back end of the first half, then we ramp it up a little bit. We start the second half slowly, and sometimes that's to our detriment, by the way. We have been caught out a few times where we've started too slowly. But I can't think of many teams in the league better than us late in the second half. We just seem to come to life in the second half. Fulham's fitness is going to be really tested in this game because we're a fit team. We know they're struggling a little bit with injuries and stuff. They don't necessarily have a raft of options in attacking areas from the bench. Whereas we do. We have quite a good squad. We've seen this week, haven't we, with Romain Mundle coming back in the under-21s. We've got even more players coming back available soon. And I think that's going to play into the conscience of the manager. I think Brobby was talked about in the press conference this week, and he was asked about, how far away he is from a start. Could Brian Brobby start the game, particularly away from home? That's an interesting one. He's shown in recent games he can make an impact. I think having watched a little bit of Fulham this season, I think their centre halves are there to be gotten at. And if you're going to do that, it could be with a big man getting in amongst them, and then maybe later in the game using Isidore to kind of use his pace in behind things. So the game plan's going to be really, really interesting. But I just think we've got to pick our moments, basically, when it comes to attacking play. We're very good at that, though. And a lot of it's going to come down to the team selection. I'm interested. We'll get into that, I'm sure, in a bit. But I'm really, really interested to see what team we start with, because after an international break where he's had time to work with some of these players, it might be the chance to go with a couple of ideas that he's had in attacking areas in particular.
Yeah, well, we'll get into it, and I can't wait to hear what you think about the start 11. But actually, just on that, Gav, very quickly, because it's funny watching Sunderland this season, and I know you don't like the egg chasers, Gav, but I almost compare it to, if you watch England in the rugby, it's like the autumn internationals that are going on now. International rugby at that sort of that highest level, games are always won in the last 15, 20 minutes at highest level international rugby. You see rugby, and basically with rugby, when there's not much between the sides, it's basically, right, we'll stay within 5 points of the opposition, and last 20 minutes, that's when you put the afterburners on. That's when you be positive. That's when you try and, open it up. But it's always that 20 minutes, and it's almost like, Regis Bris he talks about these stories during games, and I think he really identifies, he says, he's basically like, stay in the game, and the players know to flick a switch in that last 20 minutes to get a result, and how to get a result. And it's really interesting that the dynamics of that and how he's thinking. But let's get into the starting 11. And Andrew, I'm going to start with you, because look, from the latest press conference, Ronaldo's fit. Alderete is all good apparently after chinning someone in midweek, so he's had the boxing gloves on and he's been preparing for Fulham away. Too soon for Serkin and Mundell to be involved in the matchday squad. So let's use our starting point, Andrew, as the 11 that took to the field against Arsenal, where that was a back five. Is there going to be a temptation to keep it exactly the same after a performance like that?
It's a really tricky one for me because it was an excellent performance and that unit worked fantastically well. But I take the point that we're now going up against a team who are likely to wilt if they're not given an easy foothold in the game. So do you want to mix it up and maybe just move a body further forward so you can put more pressure on Fulham? They're already going to be panicky, as we've said, because of all the stuff happening around the club at the moment. We presumably want to make the most of that. Any team in the Premier League, if they get the lead or get an early start, a decent start going, they'll build momentum. So we have to strangle that from the off. And I think to do that, we're probably going to be better off by switching back out from a 5. However, that said, I can fully understand if people want to stick with it because it did work really well last time out.
Okay, so if he switches to a 4, Andrew, is it the same 11 and Gacharda moves into midfield, or does he change the starting 11?
I think it would be the first. I think we stick with the personnel, but ask one or two to perform a different role. Nobody in that team at the moment, I think, deserves to be dropped because everybody's performing really well. Alderete is back and available from what I gather, and I would love to find a way to get him in the side if possible. But from what I gather from what Bris said, he didn't actually get any minutes on the pitch, did he, whilst away? So there's now a fear that he hasn't got much football under his belt. So I think Alderete maybe goes on the bench and has to bide his time. The 11 that started against... Well, potentially there might be a change further up the field that we'll come to, but certainly the defensive unit for me, the same bodies get picked, but with Gertrude asked into midfield, which thereby allows Lefay further up. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, interesting stuff, Gav, because we're talking about this potentially being more positive, more on the front foot. So Andrew thinks we might go to a 4 and push Gacharda a little bit further up. Can you see that happening, and a change in formation rather than personnel?
Oh, it's tough, isn't it? Because it would be difficult to drop Gertrude, however we say it these days. It would be really tough to drop him because he hasn't done anything wrong. I don't even know why I'm thinking about dropping him other than just for purely tactical reasons, really. I would like to see us go back to a back 4, but I think it's telling we've went to a 5. I think Bris quite likes it with this group of players, just because if you notice, when we're in possession of the ball, it frees up one of Mukiele, Ballard, Gertrude, and Hume to move into midfield. And so tactically we're quite flexible. It looks like a back 5 on paper, but they might step into a 4. One of them goes into midfield. It's pretty flexible who does that job. I think against Arsenal it was Hume and it didn't really work. I think in was it Arsenal? I'm questioning myself. No, it was Everton, wasn't it?
Yeah,
no, it was Everton. It was Everton. Sorry, Hume did that job against Everton. It didn't really work. Against Arsenal, it was more Ballard. I found Ballard was the one stepping up into midfield and carrying the ball.
It was almost like they were taking turns, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So it's pretty flexible, and that could be that could be something. But I've just got this thing ringing around in the back of my head about what the opposition fan guest said when she said about their midfield maybe lacking in numbers in defensive midfield and stuff. Pretty sure Lukic just struggling for this one, who's been one of their key men in there. So we've got to make sure we're strong in the middle of the pitch. I know that's kind of something a non-negotiable you need in most Premier League games. If you're strong in midfield, you're going to be all right. So I'm just kind of looking at that, but I'm not sure what he's going to do. With it being away from home, I'm erring more towards a back five, but I don't really want to see that, if I'm honest.
I'll just throw into there, though, Gav, if you think back to Forest away and Palace away, which I think were potentially two of our best performances of the season, even though how well we played against Arsenal, how well we played against Chelsea, we were fantastic at Forest and Palace. We played a 4 then, and I think that the tactic then was when we were under pressure, that Xhaka dropped in between the two centre halves, wasn't it, to make that 5 up?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like we're sat trying to work it out, and we do this every week. We go around and round the doors, and we never settle on what it's going to be. That is a real strength of the team. That. Go on, Andrew. You look dishevelled there. You look absolutely lost for words.
I can't let that lie. I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to hide me light under a bushel. I said prior to the Arsenal game that he would stick with the same 11, and he did. So I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'll rephrase what I
really
meant by that.
big-headed of me, but I've got to get that one in.
I'll rephrase it then. I'll say this: at the time of recording, we're not quite sure what he's going to do. I've got a few predictions right this season with team selections, but genuinely, every time we sit here to do this, I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do. Like, I just don't understand sometimes what. But that is a strength because we're obsessed. I've said this before. We're obsessed with Sunderland. We like to think we know quite a lot about our team. Marco Silva, what's he thinking when he's looking at it? Do you know what I mean? He must be thinking, Jesus, I don't know what they're going to do today. So I think, look, what's so difficult about this is I think it's difficult to drop players. That's the thing, isn't it? You know, like how do you drop Gertruida? How do you drop Hume? Because I even said that for the Arsenal game, I would drop Hume, but then he had probably his best game of the season. He was outstanding. So how do you drop these players? It's difficult. And the only justification I could possibly give for dropping players would be that because of international duty, he's had time to work with Mukiele. He's had time to work with Enzo Lafay, with Isidore, with Robbie, with even Luke O'Nien and Dan Neil. So when he's had a bit of time with these players, does it alter his thinking? It hasn't really altered his thinking in previous international windows. But Robbie being on the brink is the big one. Because I just think he's going to start a game sooner rather than later, and it might be this one. And if he starts, I think it might not be the best idea to go with the back five. I think with him, you need support around him, you need bodies around him, which would mean maybe an extra body in midfield as opposed to in the defence.
Can I just throw in there as well, Gav, that potentially the other thing that doesn't help is the opposition. Because let's say this game was, we skipped the next two and we went straight in the plane going to Anfield. Then we would be thinking, well, back five, go in the same as we did against Arsenal and Chelsea, and it'd be a no-brainer. But are we a little bit confused, thinking, well, it's Fulham, and if we do push another player out from defence, and rather than playing 5 at the back, we can push another player forward and go at them and, be 2-0 up after an hour or something like that?
Yeah, and as well, to be honest, some of the best displays this season with a back four have had Alderete in there. And it's been since he dropped out that we've kind of changed the system at the back. And it's worked, to be fair. It has largely worked. I mean, if you're going to be hypercritical, you can look at the goals against Arsenal. There weren't brilliant goals to concede if there's ever a good time. You know what I mean by that? Like the one from Trossard, I think if there's another body in midfield, Siddiqui doesn't feel his pressure to instruct somebody to chase the runner, and then he doesn't get that room to shoot. The God who scored the first goal, can't remember, Saka, wasn't it? Who scored their first goal? It was a little bit sloppy from a defensive perspective.
Well, it was Lafay as well, giving the ball away, wasn't it?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, Lafay giving the ball away, puts on the back foot. So that might play into his thinking. I know Arsenal are a different quality to Fulham, but you have got to consider these things. When we played against Everton, the first half was terrible, wasn't it? And that was with a back five. Yes, we went away to Chelsea and put in a fantastic performance with a back five. But again, that's a very different challenge to Fulham. I would be maybe looking more at those games. You mentioned before Palace and Forest and what worked there. I would maybe be looking more at that, me. But again, we did have Alderete available for them games, and I can't see them just chucking him back in, particularly without game time. So it's I mean, I'm really struggling to pin down what I think will happen here.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, coming back to you on the forward positions, because you said you might potentially see a change or two in the forward position. So what would be your thinking?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Broby came in ahead of Isidore. Gav had a nice line there. Broby's breakthrough it was something like that. It was a nice bit of alliteration.
Broby's big breakthrough.
That's
I think
it.
it was.
That's it.
Might be wrong.
Big time breakthrough.
Big time breakthrough. I know we were joking on about getting predictions right and pulling each other's legs and what have you. It is amazing, and I know I've said this time and time again, it is amazing that we do have these various players to bring in and change things around if need be. It's a wonderful position to be able to say to have a player of Aldrete's quality in defence and not need to rush him back without having got some match sharpness in his legs. There's different possibilities up front as well, and I just think the fact that Broby's had even more time on the training pitch. There was that story, wasn't there, 1 or 2 days ago that the Netherlands have been watching him. Again, I think their manager said he'd kept half an eye on him, so that's going to be a boost to him. He's going to be buzzing after the Arsenal game, so now would be a good time to bring him in. The only thing that makes me maybe consider otherwise, again, is from your conversation with Fulhamish. They struggle with shots from around the edge of the box, seemingly. Now, who do you want in your team for somebody who can shoot from anywhere? It's Isidore. He'll have a pop, whether it's on his left foot, his right foot, doesn't matter what the angle, doesn't matter what the distance is. He backs himself and he'll have a go. Broby isn't as explosive on that score. So there is that little bit of doubt. However, balancing it all up, I think we do start with Broby up front. And then, as has been mentioned in the pod earlier, in that final 20 minutes, when we push that button to move through the gears, that's when you see Isidore coming on. That's what I envisage, anyway.
Right. So just to double check, Andrew, you've got this you've got 4 at the back with Geertruida pushed up into midfield alongside Xhaka and Siddiqui, and you've got Broby up front to start, and same on the flank. So you've got Lafay and Traore.
Assuming that adds up to 11, yes.
Well, I was going to ask, rather that, because again, it's this kind of who deserves to be dropped. Nobody deserves to be dropped, but would there be a temptation then to sit Traore out and have Isidore playing wide?
Possibly. I mean, yeah, it would be really harsh for Isidore to drop out because he's been doing really good things. I think he's really come on and shown himself to be Premier League quality. Traore's getting there, but he does still have those daft moments in him. So somebody on the coaching staff could very well make an argument for have somebody who's a bit more reliable there. The Geertruida one, and I have now switched from Geertruida to Geertruida, but I could be wrong there. So don't quote me on that. He's been brilliant for us. But there has been 1 or 2 times when he's played in defence where he's switched off. I'm picking hairs here. I'm just talking to half a second.
Yeah.
But his stronger points have been on the ball. He's been able to keep possession and spread it around. So yeah, I think pushing him up into the middle does then give Traore and Lafay a bit more license to be attacking and to get around a striker if it's going to be Broby. I do fully accept, I think it's a fair point that if that means Isidore drops out, that's a bit harsh on him. And if he was to go out onto the wing, I could see him doing a good job because he's flying at the moment.
Yeah. So Gav, and I know you mentioned a couple of times that it's really difficult to second guess what the manager's going to do. But I'm going to ask you to stop getting splinters in your arse sitting on the fence. What's he going to do? And you said you've kind of ummed and ahhed between the 5 at the back, 4 at the back. Andrew makes a good point about Gachauda. He was caught on the ball against Arsenal and Chelsea, even though he did defend well generally. He had those couple of lapses of concentration. So whether the Bris might, for safety, might be tempted to put Alderete back in, but it depends on his fitness. So, and again, Andrew's talked about those changes in the forward positions, as you did, Broby. You can see Broby starting. So what do you reckon he's going to go with at Fulham?
Well, they play with one up front, don't they, Fulham? They play with, as most teams do, to be fair, Jimenez, who's a bit of a target man. So I would be tempted to go the back four. I would, because they play a front three. Well, they play a striker with a 3-man attack midfield behind. So I would rather we have the extra body in midfield than at the back if it was me. So if I was putting us on the spot now, Roof's in goal, Ronaldo at left back, of course, because we know he's not injured, which is good news. To deal with that aerial presence, I'll go with Ballard and Mukiele as the two, with Trey Hume at right back. Although at some point I'm still expecting Mukiele to go there and for Hume to drop out, but you can't drop Hume after the Arsenal game. And I know he's been away on international duty and stuff, but they rested him, didn't they, for the last game, Northern Ireland? So it's not like he's been really stretched away. And Ballard, of course, he was suspended for the second game, so the pair of them missed out on that one, which is good news for us. It means they haven't played that extra game. So yeah, Ronaldo, Ballard, Mukiele, Trey Hume. I'll then go with a midfield three of Enzo Lefebvre, Noah Siddiqui and Granit Xhaka, with Talbi on the left, because I just think Talbi deserves a start. Again, he's went away on international duty but hasn't played. I'm dying to see him on the left from the start of a game. And I just think this would be the one where you move someone across into the midfield, which would be Lefebvre, but you get that width from Talbi. I think on the right, I think you'll stick with Traore. He just seems to like him. I think he's due a goal as well, so it could be this one. And then up front, I'm going to go with Broby. And it's nothing against Wilson Isidore. I just think away from home, against their centre-halves, I think it makes sense to go with someone a little bit more physical and then maybe bring Isidore on later in the game as a do these bunny ears with my fingers finisher. But hey, look, I keep saying this. It's nice to have these options. I think the team I've just named is a strong one, but the alternative team with a back five would probably be unchanged with Broby up front instead of Isidore. So I'm kind of expecting one of the two. I think he might be tempted to go with man for man, a 3-man midfield. Broby finally getting his first start in the starting 11 against a team who, let's be honest, we should have enough quality to go and beat. And I think he'll fancy our chances, but it'll be another game of chess from Bris. I don't think you're going to see us flying out the blocks or anything.
Yeah, well, now you've heard our predictions for what we think the 11 will be. You can have a look on the website because Martin will have put his predicted starting 11 for the game as well. And then in a couple hours' time or whenever that is, when the team sheet comes out, you can see how wrong we all were. But let's get into what we think is going to happen in the game. Andrew, we're trying to second guess whether we're going to be more on the front foot or whether we're going to, keep these same tactics as, dropping deep and then trying to catch them. How do you think it's going to play out and give us a prediction?
I think, Fulham will be sent out with a bit of a rocket up their arses and will start fairly quickly, but we will not panic. We've dealt with spells before. I think it was yourself, Chris, or in fact, both of you might have made the point that the performances against Forest and Crystal Palace are probably the blueprints for how we do things. We'll just keep it nice and tight. We don't need to go all guns blazing. We'll keep it calm, but then we'll slowly build into the game. We'll kind of take control of midfield, and then we'll get a couple of goals late on. I see us winning 2-0 and it being clear to a neutral that we are, as a squad, a couple of levels above Fulham at the moment.
Yeah, and Gav, it's time for you to look into your crystal ball. Tell us how it's all going to play out.
Yeah, I think Andrew's probably right with us getting a clean sheet. They didn't score against Everton. They scored 3 against Wolves. They got 1 against the Mags. They've got goals in them, Fulham, but I just think we look so resolute at the minute. And I know that's probably a bit rich considering we conceded twice against Arsenal and there were sloppy goals, but it was Arsenal. I think in the main, we look so solid in there. Naturally, we're going to be more defensive away from home during periods in the game, so I think that probably suits the players we've got. So I'm fancying us to probably start a little bit slow, but measured. Maybe get a goal before half-time. And I'm really fancying Brobby for some reason. I just think we signed this lad, and look, people were talking about him as the next Man United striker a year before that, £50 million centre forward, the next big thing. He's got his confidence from that goal against Arsenal. We've got to capitalise on it. I fancy him to have a really good game. So I'm thinking Brobby before half-time, and then maybe to round things off later in the game, we'll have one from Wilson Isidore. 2-0. I'm going to go with same score as you, Andrew, 2-0.
That's it, full house. And I enjoyed you describing Sunderland as a so solid crew there, Gav. Look at me being all hip and down with the kids on the street, eh? Look at that. I never thought I would see it happen, but there you go. But anyway, yes, full house, 2-0. Andrew and Gav have predicted for the game, so we'll all take that.
Just off, 21 seconds from the end of games is normally where we get our goals, isn't it?
Oh, very good.
Did you have to Google the names of their songs, by the way, there? Or did
No, that's the only one I know, to be fair.
Yeah. I was going to say we could start doing a trade-off, but I don't think they had any other songs, so there's no more funds to be had.
Never liked them, wouldn't have a clue, but they're in my head somewhere, so I must be cool on some level.
Hey, who'd have predicted 3 proper Dars from Sunderland would mention so solid crew on a podcast? Jesus Christ.
Can I just point out, just in case this might be incredibly mean, we're all saying, hey, look at us, we're cool. If you told me that they were out in the late 90s, I'd probably go, oh, was it that long? I'd actually believe it. I don't even know.
I'm on their Wikipedia now. 1998 was when Solid Crew were formed. So there you go, Andrew. That's how down with the kids we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Didn't like them the first time round. Don't like them this time round. But anyway, that's a good place to end on. So just need you to say thank you very much, Andrew. Always a pleasure, mate.
Yes, thank you. As always, good crack and nice time to be looking forward to Sunderland games.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gav, I'll take that 2-0 any day, mate.
Yep. Let's hope the lads do what they've done all season and do us proud. I'm sure they will, and I'm looking forward to coming on after the game, hopefully talking about a win when I'm on in the morning. So yes, looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to that. And thanks again for everyone for listening. Don't forget, as Gav's already touched on, we'll have immediate reaction after the final whistle at Craven Cottage with a pod that should drop very soon after that. And of course, we'll have Sunday supplement that'll come out on Sunday morning as well. That's a flying fact, by the way. Just put that out there. And we'll have all the reaction on the Local Report website, so look out for all of that as well. But from us, it's bye for now.
Podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sports on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This winter's Ashes series is lining up to be one of the most exciting in a generation. Get all the latest reaction immediately after all 5 of the test matches on the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast with myself, Gaz Rana, and former England cricketer Mark Butcher. Search Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.